Hello. What we are going to try and attempt to do during this session is to understand Google Cloud Deploy. How does it differ from Cloud Build? And how can we set up a Google Cloud Deploy pipeline? So, most of this I have not really used a lot in production because I've mostly depended on Cloud Build because it is able to do what I want. But for our use case, for a more advanced architecture, you know, you can use at you can look at Cloud Deploy as a means for setting up your CI/CD pipelines on Google Cloud. If you take a look at Cloud Build, I will just explain Cloud Build a little to kind of build up upon the difference it has to kind of build up on the difference it has to Cloud Deploy. So with Cloud Build, what you have is the ability to create Cloud Build triggers. The most important thing that it gives you is the ability to create Cloud Build triggers. Right. Now, these triggers can respond to certain events. So it can be webhook event, it can be pull requests, it can be when you deploy a new when you commit a new code to a certain branch, that can be when you use the Cloud Build trigger. So if you try to click on, create a trigger here, right, you should then see some options. So you can specify some name with some region, and you can basically say that, okay, when I push code to some branch, I want you to go ahead to deploy this repository that I have, right? To deploy this repository that I have. And then you can set up some kind of a build configuration or some build steps. This is an example of some build step that you have for Cloud Build. So it's kind of like your normal, GitHub action when you're using Cloud Build, where you are able to set up, different steps. So your build configuration is kind of just for you to set up the steps, and then the trigger is where you mainly unlike GitHub action where you put everything inside the same place, this one you kind of separate it out a little. So you put the information about the trigger, like the repository, the branch, and all of that. You put that inside the trigger, and then the configuration itself, you can keep it in the file, or if you want, you can do it inline here. So you can open this up and then you can add your various steps. So you don't need to really add like a checkout step, right? You can just go ahead to directly add your various images. So here we have one where we are running playwright test. We have another with Docker where we are building our image, and then we are pushing the image, and then we use the Cloud Builder to then deploy the service, right? Now, I have another video where I go into details about Cloud Build. So this is just if you are not aware of Cloud Build, this is just how it works. Now, how it differs then from, although you do get some added advantage, which is, for instance, you can require approval before the build executes, right? And so you can basically create multiple triggers. So one trigger for maybe your dev environment. So that one might point to, let's say, your dev branch. Another trigger for your production environment, which might point to your main branch, right? But you have to create multiple triggers in order to be able to do that. Now, the major difference to Cloud Deploy is Cloud Deploy allows you to create a single pipeline. You can think of it as AWS. AWS also has a similar thing, I think, Code Deploy or something like that, which allows you to set up different targets, right? And so what you do on Cloud Deploy, I'm not sure if they have the architecture diagram here can show well, right? So Cloud Deploy also integrates on Cloud Build, right? It also integrates on Cloud Build and uses cloud storage and some CI tooling. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to be able to set up a deployment pipeline such that you are able to deploy, when you trigger that pipeline, you are able to deploy your application to multiple targets. So those targets can be your dev branch, it can be your, sorry, not dev branch, it can be your dev environment, it can be your staging environment, and it can be your production environment. So it's more for a complex CI/CD pipeline compared to Cloud Build. Cloud Build is just when something happens, I want to do this, that's all. But if you want something that can flow such that you can deploy to the dev environment, and then when you are sure that, okay, these are the changes I want, you can promote it to the staging environment, and then also you can promote it finally to the production environment. If that is what you want, then Cloud Deploy is the way to go, right? So use Cloud Deploy for such a use case. Now, for us to just get quickly started, right, you can just use the tutorial that they have here. So you can just use the tutorial they have here. Now, the one thing to notice, you can use Cloud Deploy only for Kubernetes and then Cloud Run, right? Maybe it might be updated, I think, later on to support multiple environments, but at the moment, when using to Google Cloud, it's for GKE, it supports GKE and Cloud Run. So we are just going to look at Cloud Run's walkthrough, right? I'm also not a bit really very familiar with this, but we are trying to look at the Cloud Run walkthrough. So once you start the walkthrough by clicking on this link, it should open up something like this for you, where you will be asked to select your project, and then you'll be asked to configure the project that you want to use, and then you'll be asked to clone some source repository, which is this source repository. It is a very simple Go application. You can check it here, where it is able to kind of access your port, check your port. Sorry, not access your port, check your port. I'm looking for this. This is just the server. I'm looking for the handler. Yeah. So it is able to just get the environment variable called name, right? And then it adds some logs to it. So just some logs. That is all. So you can see, I would come back to it a bit, but you can see in one of these configurations here that there is a staging one, there is a test one, and there is a prod one, and each one of them has a different environment variable. So you can, in the end, in the once you deploy the application, you should end up with different environment variables for each stage or for each target. Right. But we will kind of go into these configs in a bit to kind of understand it. So once you get started with this, Google Cloud will ask you to run this setup.sh. Right. You have a setup and then a cleanup.sh. So you should be able to run this particular lab without necessarily, I mean, you will just be paying cents, if anything at all, because if you look at the pricing for Cloud Deploy, for your first deploy, but it is per billing account. You should know this. It's not per project. So for your billing account, for your first active, even if it has multiple targets like dev, prod, QA, whatnot, and then production, you will still pay nothing, right? No charge for your first one and then multiple targets, right? You pay nothing. But each additional pipeline that you create, you will now pay $5 per month, per billing month, right? So that is the basic pricing. So you can't be able to test out this whole thing. That means go through this lab without necessarily paying anything, right? Because you will just be using resources that you easily delete. So in the setup.sh, you will just basically enable some APIs, which I have already done, so I will not do that. And then you create some kind of persistent Cloud Shell configuration, right? So that you can reuse the same Cloud Shell configuration. So you will set some region and then environment variables like, and then Google Cloud SDK variables like you will set some configurations like the deploy region, which will be your region variable that you set here. Right. So you set some configurations, and the idea here is you are trying to kind of like persist those configurations. So the next time you need to do the same thing, you just need to kind of just activate that configuration, right? So you just create the configuration here, right? And then you go ahead to set these values inside it. So the next time you need to use it, you just need to switch to this configuration and then you can use it. And that's what I normally do even locally because, you have maybe some customers work that you are doing. You also have your own personal work that you are doing and you don't want to mix and match the various regions and stuff like that. So you create a configuration, you put all of your configurations inside there, and so next time, if you need to switch to some other project, then you just need to switch to that configuration. Right. So you just do some and then there is a Terraform setup. So the Terraform setup, what it will do is it will create a service account and then it will create artifact registry, which should not come at any cost by default. Right. Unless you start using your registry to a certain point, registries will come at a very, very low cost to nothing at all, right? So you should be able to set up your registry and then your service account. That is what it does. So it just enables some APIs, I think. Yeah, it enables some APIs and then it sets up your artifact registry and then it sets up a service account, right? But we don't want to do the Terraform bit, right? I will just stick to doing the Terraform bit from the Google Cloud Console. So what the important thing is we already have artifact registry. So I already have a registry created here. If you don't have, then you need to go ahead to create a registry. I already have a registry called my apps. So that is what I'm going to use. Um, Now coming back to this, the other thing we need is a service account. So you need a service account for Cloud Build, and that service account, you need to give it the permission for storage admin, logs writer, and then artifact registry writer. So the storage admin is basically for the build logs and the build information to kind of be stored there in Cloud Build for Cloud Build, and then the logs writer allows it to write logs, and then artifact registry allows it to create images on artifact registry. So you need to grant those roles. So I created one service account here, and then I called it Cloud Build Service Account. Right. Another role I granted is Cloud Run Admin because I wanted to do something else. But if you are only doing this lab, then you can just focus on only granting the roles that you have here. But I am doing something else also, so that is why I have Cloud Run Admin also as a permission there. The other service account you need is a service account for Cloud Deploy. Right. So Cloud Deploy itself needs a service account. So you need to grant it the Cloud Deploy job runner. So you can see that here. I also have another one, Cloud Deploy SVC, and I've granted it artifact registry writer, Cloud Deploy runner, Cloud Run developer, and then the service account user roles. So that those are the roles you will also need to grant to Cloud Deploy service account. So you will need maybe 3 service accounts. One is for the build, right? And then another one is for Cloud Deploy itself. And then the last one will be for your application, right? So the application also has its own separate service account. And this is good because you now have separate, credentials because the application should only, at the moment, this application does not do much. So it only writes logs, that's all. But you could be working in a complex setting where maybe you need more permission. So in that case, you can grant your application service account more permissions. But we don't need that, so this is fine. So this is what basically the Terraform would do. So you just need to run setup sh, and then it will create all of those things. We don't need that. And then another thing, the last thing it does, which I kind of, whilst I was going through, I kind of missed, was that it basically looks at any of the template files here, which we will come to, and then it replaces some of the environment variables there. It just replaces it. So it just replaces the environment variables in those files, right? So once we are done with that, I think the next step here is, of course, if you don't already have Scaffold, then you can just visit the link and then go to the installation process. So when you come to Scaffold, you should be able to see the installation process here. And then you can go ahead to for your respective environment, just install Scaffold. I think, yeah, Google Cloud SDK, if you're using Cloud SDK, you are also able to install Scaffold. I think I should have probably gone with this method. I just went with the Windows method and I added it to my path. But if you are using JCloud, I'm also using JCloud, but it didn't come to mind. You can just use this command to just install Scaffold. I'll do that right after this video, I think, and then remove the Excel because this is much more easily manageable. I can just run component update and then it will update it if there is any new changes. So, but whichever way you go with, that works fine. Now, Scaffold is kind of a way for us to organize or build our CI/CD, right? So if you look at it, it's a leading open source tool for continuous development, right? And you will basically use it to set up your development process. Now, for our situation, you will need to, if you are following the tutorial, you will need to seed into the app config, which is here, and you will go into scaffold.yaml.template. right? For our situation, I have kind of copied those files here. And then, so this is it, right? This is the scaffold file. And then the configuration, you can find that here. When you come to the scaffold.dev documentation, you can go to references and then just go to the scaffold.yaml, and you should be able to find the various configuration options here, right? You can specify some cloud storage configuration options. You can specify some build hooks. You know, there are a lot of options, so you can explore it further to kind of go through. But what we need for our application, and also in the example, is we just need to specify the image, right? So in our case, this is the name of the image. And then also this is the name of our pipeline that we just want to use, or our build process that we just want to use, right? So I'm using just the same name as the image. And then the context is you need to provide it. Where is the application, right? So in this example, I think you can see that it says the context is hello-app, which is this folder right here, right? That is where the application lives. My context, since I'm inside Cloud Deploy folder, my context is like previous. So it's like, I'm like, go back. Right. And then you need to specify your project ID. So in this project, I'm just writing my own project ID and stuff directly to make it simple. Of course, I will delete these resources after. But if you are working in your example, we just need to make sure that, these are kind of filled in with your corresponding project ID. If you are following this tutorial, right, then the setup.sh will automatically replace the project ID for you. So the setup.sh is intended to replace the project ID. So it will replace it for you anywhere that there is project ID. But in my case, I had to manually kind of like put my own project IDs around. So I have this, and then now you have the various profiles, right? So the profiles kind of describe the various stages that you have, or the various targets that you have. So we have a testing one, right? So we have a testing one, we have a staging one, and then we have a production one, right? So these kind of declare the various applications. So you have a test, production, and then a staging one. So you look at it here, you will see, let's look at the test. You see the test that declares a service, right? So which is basically a Cloud Run service. So if you come to, let's just search for that, Cloud Run YAML reference. I think I have it here, yeah. Cloud Run YAML reference. You should be able to see the Cloud Run YAML reference here. So this is basically what you have here, right? So that is what you declare. So you declare the test one, and then you declare the spec details. So here we are having an instance that maximum scale is 1, right? And then you need to point the service account name to your service account that you are using. And then you specify the containers with the container name, and then the image, right? So this is basically this spec right here. So if you had more that you wanted to do, because normally when you are configuring your Cloud Run service, you have a lot of things that you do or you enable. Maybe you have ingress, you have how do you call it, VPC egress, you have session affinity, you have startup CPU boost. So you can do all of these configurations inside the service YAML, right? So inside your scaffold, you need to configure your service information, and then link that under profiles, right? So we have configured 3 different services: testing one, the staging one, and then the prod one. So you can see here the test one, as I showed you, the difference is the name, right? The name of the service, which is this. So this kind of signifies the name of the service, and then you come to staging. The same way, this is the name of the service, right? The max scale is also the same, it's 1, right? And then you have the service account being the same service account, and then the container, and then the image being the same container and image. For prod, we could maybe say, okay, let's bump up the maximum scale to 3. So it can scale maximum to 3 instances, something like that, right? So you can kind of use this to configure even volume mounts and everything. So once you are done with your configuration, you think that is all good, then you can go ahead to run your first command to build scaffold, right? So let me just go ahead to copy this. I will have to update this a little, right? So you need to first cd into app config. In our case, it is app deploy, cloud deploy. So we will cd there, cloud deploy. And then I will paste the command. Let me paste it right here because I will need to update it a little to suit what I am doing. So since I'm on Windows, I can either just write my region directly here, right? US dash central one, right? Or I've put it inside an environment variable. So I can just do env is to region, right? So on PowerShell, you can set up your environment variables with like env is to something, some name equal to something. So I've already done this, right? So if I try to do this, right, you can see it's US Central 1, right? So the region dash docker.pkg.dev slash my project slash, now I need to specify the repository. So this is my apps, right? So this is basically the path to your repository, right? So if you are following the hello, the hello app right here, it will go ahead. Once you do the deployment with the Terraform, it will go ahead to create the hello app registry. But I already have one. So if I come to artifact registry, I should be able to see that registry, which is this, my apps. So if I come back once more, right, you should be able to see I already have that registry here. So if I click on it and then I even click on copy path, you should see it here. So this is the path basically, right? This is the path, right? So that is the path. And so what we are trying to do here is we are trying to just tell Scaffold to just build this particular artifact. So you should just build the image. So when you come here, you see artifacts. So we just want to build that artifact. Right. We just want to build that artifact. So that is why we are running that command. Where did I run the command? Where did I write it? I think I've forgotten. Where did I paste it? Let me see. I think I did not save it. So yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I have specified what I need. So env region and then the name and my registry. So I'm done. So I can go ahead to run that command. Yep. So this would then go ahead to try to create your image, right? So it will go ahead to try to then build your application. It will go ahead to then try to build your application. So this might take some time, right, to build. So you can maybe leave it for a while and then go do something else. But whilst it's doing that, let's just go to next and then see what are the next steps. So once it is done, you can run this command to list all of the images and hopefully you are able to see your image, right? So if I just try to just see, I don't know if this is going to work. Since I'm already running the build here, I'm thinking probably I'll have an issue, but let's see. So I'll paste this, right? I think it's quite a long, it's quite a long command, so, but let's just try it and see. Okay. My IT configurations. Okay, I think probably is because of this command. That is why. Ah, okay, I think I know. I don't have. Uh, I specified the wrong image. Hello dash app. No. What I rather have is what is it? My apps, right? My apps. That is the registry. Is it done? It looks like it's done. So it has succeeded. So if I come to artifact registry, I don't want to just go around over there. So I'll just come over here. I'll come to artifact registry. And then I should see my image right here. So it was just built now. You can see the tag 06 dot dot dot, something dirty. So if you come here to artifact, you should see that it should be pointing to that one. So it should be pointing to that latest artifact, right? So this is what would then be used once you kind of create a release to one of your targets. So let me just remove this command from here. Okay, yeah. So I don't leave it there. Okay. So once you are done, you list your images, you are sure the image is there. The next step is to create the pipeline, right? So let's go ahead to create the pipeline. So I will go ahead to cd dot, and then I'll go ahead to do this. So the pipeline is called, so the pipeline is inside pipeline-config/delivery pipeline. Now, if you look at this file, this is just the pipeline for you to deploy your application, right? You can also find it the same way here, hello-app. You go to cloud deploy config, right? And then you will find it here, delivery YAML pipeline. So the only difference I made is kind of like changing the name of the pipeline. And then I think I left the target IDs the same. Yeah, I left the target IDs the same. And then also I think I just changed my description. That's all. So you probably just change the name and then your description for your pipeline, and that should work out. So I'm just going to change, because I don't, my folder is not called cloud deploy dash config, it's just cloud deploy. Yeah. So I'm going to deploy the pipeline. Let's see. Let's see, what is the problem? Unable to read. I think I've made a mistake. Cloud deploy. Okay. I made a mistake here. Slash, not, it's not directly there. Slash pipeline dash config slash. Yeah. Because it's inside cloud deploy slash pipeline dash config and then the pipeline. Right. Now this pipeline, we are saying that it has 3 stages, right? And each of them points to a certain target, but we've not created the targets yet, right? But let's see, we should be able to now see our pipeline show up here. You can also create a pipeline from the console. It's similar parameters. So you specify the name, some description, the region. So US Central, right? The region, the reason we did not specify the region, if you can remember, in the setup.sh, it runs this command here. So this command here sets the deploy region. So it sets a default region. So anytime you create a deploy pipeline, you don't need to manually specify the region, because it is set by default for you in your configuration. So this is what you would do if you wanted to do that. So you don't need to specify the region, right? And then you now select Cloud Run. And then you'd kind of, here is where you would define the targets. We have not created our targets just yet, but you define the target and then you go ahead to create your pipeline. So we have created a pipeline. Now we've dictated that we have 3 stages, but we've not created any of the targets just yet, right? So we need to go ahead to create the targets. If we try to run this command to describe the pipeline, you should see, let's say, describe my sample notes. VS Code is being a bit slow, but let's see. So you can see that he's unable to find those targets. So it is there, but then those targets are not created yet. So let's now work on the targets. Now we have 3 targets, which corresponds to the various applications. So in your scaffold YAML, it's just, it might be a bit confusing, but in your scaffold YAML, you just declare your build configurations. So that is anything about cloud build, anything about cloud storage, anything about the artifacts that you want to build out in the end, right? And the context for where the application is, and then the configuration for the applications themselves. So you put the application configuration with your build configuration in your scaffold YAML, right? And then the pipeline is different, because you also need to create the pipeline itself, and then you need to create the various targets, which is like the various stages, right? So here, we now, after we've created our pipeline, we now need to create the various targets or the various stages. So we look at the test target. You can see that it's this API version, and the kind is a target. You specify the name, which corresponds to the pipeline ID that you specified here, the target ID that is specified here, right? So we specify the name corresponding to that. We give it some description, and then you provide a location, right? So that is like the region. So the your project slash your project ID slash location slash the region, right? And then you provide some usage execution configs here. The most important is also the service account. So here we are using the service account for cloud deploy, right? And then inside the app itself, the app or the service configuration, we are using the service account for the service itself. And then inside Scaffold, we are using the service account under the Google Cloud build. We are using the service account for the cloud build, right? So you can see we have three service accounts that we are using. The Scaffold itself doesn't really need a service account because once you run the command here, it's just going to use your credentials, right? That you are signed in with. So it's not really gonna kind of like need its own service account. What needs service account is the cloud build process itself that needs the service account. And then also your targets need their own service account, right? Which is the cloud deploy service account. And then finally, your apps also have their own service accounts, right? So we define the test target, we define the staging target. So the difference is there mostly is the name and then the description. That's all. But they are all using the same service account. And we also define the prod target. So we will now go ahead to then deploy the various targets, right? So this is where you will now just do the same command again, jcloud deploy apply dash dash file, and then you will specify the various targets, right? So we will try this. So we will try this and then we'll say target dash test. So we'll apply the test target, which will basically create the testing stage. And then we will also apply the staging target. And finally, we will apply the prod target. Right, so we will finally apply the prod target. So you just need to apply those targets. Now, once you are done, you can go ahead to check your console and refresh, and you can see that it just popped up, right? So the difference between the target configurations, you can see they are almost the same except for the name and then the description, but the production has a different variable set here, which is require approval being true, right? So you can see that here, that in the staging, there is no require approval, but it's only in the prod. So that means that when you create a release, right? When you create a release, it can basically be deployed into your application, into your environment, but for the production, it will require you to approve it before it will work, right? So you can see the various targets created. Now we need to create a release, right, into the pipeline. So we need to create some kind of a rollout into the pipeline. So I think these are to create the various targets. So we have created the targets. So you can run this command to list all targets, but we can also see it from here. We've confirmed it from the UI, so we just skip it. You go to next. And now we need to create a release. So that is when you want to deploy a specific version of your application. That is where you do a release. So in this case, we already run scaffold build to create a version of the application, which is our Docker run container or container image, where we basically now have this tag. So we have I would say in theory, we have some kind of a release, but we've not kind of released it into the pipeline. But we do have an image or we do have a version of our application. So now we need to tell the pipeline or we need to release that version of the application into the pipeline. So we'll go ahead to create our first release. So we'll copy this command and then once more, I'll just paste so that I can make some changes because this is not hello-app. This is my sample-notes. So I'm specifying the delivery pipeline name. I need to specify the build artifacts. So with this one, the build artifact, as you can see, it's here. So it's in cloud deploy slash artifact.json. So I'm going to specify it this way, cloud deploy slash artifact.json. And where is the source? So this basically is where is all of the configuration, right? So the configuration is inside cloud deploy. So the configuration is inside cloud deploy. And then you give the release a name. So we are creating the first release. We are just going to call it 001, right? So we have specified the build artifact, and then the source is where is the configurations, right, for the application, because this is where it will now kind of find the scaffold, and then it will find the profiles for the various ones. So it will find the production profile or the production manifest. It will find the staging manifest, the test manifest, and then it will load them into the pipeline, right? So that is why you also need to declare what is the source. So where are the profiles for the various applications that you should deploy, right? Because these profiles are also corresponding to their respective targets, right? Yeah. Um, yeah. So you can see here that we specify it in the pipeline that this is the profile, this is the profile, this is the profile. So once we run this command, right, it is going to go ahead to then read the scaffold or YAML, and then, you know, uh, it's going to go ahead to then read the scaffold or YAML, find the corresponding, profile, and then load its YAML, right? And then load its YAML, and then load its YAML. Right, so that is what it's basically going to do. So that is why we had to declare these profiles here. And now in the pipeline corresponds to say, okay, so for this target or for this stage, this is its profile. And in the profile, we then have the service information right here. So let's see. Let's now run this command, and fingers crossed, there should be no issue. Let's go. So this should then kick off a release, right? And this should kick off the release, and it will load all of the profiles, right? And then we will basically have the release only in the test environment, right? So let's come over here. Okay, it's just I've been timed out a little. So you can use this jcloud command to list all of them, but I would prefer we just check it out from here. So you can see that a new release has been created, right? And it's being queued for running. So let's click on it. And we should see that that release is now in progress, right? So the release is in progress. And if you look at the artifacts, you should see that it has loaded the target artifacts for all of them, right? So it has loaded the target artifacts for the test, for the staging, and for the production. I was having some issues, and that was because I I was having some issues, and then initially my release was failing, but then that was because I made a mistake here. So what I basically made the mistake I did was here I specified the raw YAML as node-app-prod, but then the file name I had written it as nodes-app.prod instead of dash. So that was one mistake that I kind of made, and I was able to fix that. So let us remove this. Right. So we've created this release. Now let's look at it again to see what is the status. So you can see that this is green, meaning that this has been deployed. So we can come here, and then we can either view the rollout, we can roll back if we wanted, or we can promote it to the next stage or to the next target. Right. And you can also click on view the services in Cloud Run. I should have opened that in a new tab. So this will then bring you to your Cloud Run interface. And you should now see that the app is deployed. You can see here that from the name of the app, we specify that it should be my sample notes app test. And here we can see it's here as my sample notes app test. So we have basically deployed, deployed our application, right? We have basically released our test application. So you can go ahead to test your application. Now you are like, okay, um, this is all right. I want us to move it into QA, or I want us to move it into staging, right? Then you go to the next step where we are trying to promote the 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 release, right? So you can run this command to describe the release. For now, it's okay. I don't want us to spend too much time on that. And then you can go ahead to test it, right? So we will just copy this command, which will create a token, because our service at the moment, if you look at our service, at the moment, it requires IAM authentication, right? We did not make it an unauthenticated one. We could have probably done that by maybe looking at the service config here and looking for the one that corresponds to, I think, IAM authentication. But, let's just keep it simple, as because this is not really a service that we want to kind of spend too much time on. So we will just describe the service. So this allows you to describe. I will not describe that. What I just want is this command, but I need to replace, remember, I need to replace the name with my app name. So um, my sample dash notes. I think the region, I did not run this command to set the run region. So that is why I'm being asked to enter the region. Um, Yeah, so you can now see that we got a response from our application because our application is an SPA. So you can see that we got that response, my simple notes and all of that. Right. So we are able to test that, okay, our application works. So now we are like, okay, fine, everything works. So we want to move on to the next environment. So this is where you can promote the release. So you can promote the release from one stage to the next one. So for this promotion, I will just do it from the Cloud Console. And then the last one, we will just do it from the command line. So I'll just do this promotion from here. So I just click on promote. So with this one, what I'm basically saying is that, okay, I think this is all right. So I want you to kind of, push this to the next step, right? And then it's going to be like, okay, do you want to kind of promote this? Do you want to continue? Right. And then I'm like, yeah, I want to release this to the new target. So I'm like, okay, so promote. So this would then be promoted to the staging target, right? Which will now start a new rollout. Right. And of course, you know that you can always, roll back some kind of a release, right? Or you can redeploy the release. And whilst it is running, you should be able to cancel the rollout if you wanted, right? So if we come here, you should be able to see that, okay, inside this release, there is another rollout happening, which is going to the staging target, right? So whilst this is running, let us look at something. So the next thing we will need to do is to basically look at promoting it to our production environment. But remember, our production environment requires approval, right? So we will need to kind of do that approval. But for now, let's just look at the promotion, right? So we will copy this command. Let's just paste that here and do the correct fixes. So not hello dash app, but my sample dash notes. And then we will go ahead to just paste this. But let's just make sure that so the staging promotion has worked. So if we come back here and then we refresh, we should now see that now we have a new app, which is the staging app. We can still try to test it here by changing the app to not dash test, but dash staging. Also, we need to pick our region again. Excuse me, and we still get the same application again, right? So we've now deployed to staging, but now we want to say, so we are using the CLI this time to do the promotion. So, sorry, excuse me. So you can see that we are still on that same release. We are just promoting that release from one stage to another, right? If you create a new release, then maybe, so you create releases when you have new versions of your application. So if you have a new version of the application, then you can create a new release. But so far as we are dealing with the same version, then you just need to promote it from one release to another, right? And from one target to another till you finally get to the production. Or you can decide to just cancel that particular rollout because maybe you are like, okay, this release is not working, so you can just roll it back or just cancel it. So you can see here that we got a message here, the rollout is pending approval. So let's just come back here and then let's go back. So you can see there's a new rollout showing here. So if we even come back here, we should also see it here that we can click on review, right? Which should then give us information about that particular rollout, right? And then we are able to deploy that review, right? So at the moment, since we have not made any changes to our application, we have not deployed any, production application just yet. So that is why you see that if you look at the diff for the manifest or the difference between the targets, because we've not deployed anything, so that is why it is nothing. So from nothing, this is the proposed changes, right? But if we were to like create a new release which has like different maybe options, then you should see that there should be some differences in the diff, right? I will try to see if maybe right after this we can try to create some release to just test. So we need to now approve this particular release, right? Or this particular rollout. We need to approve it, right? So we can click on approve here to just approve, or you can also use the Google Cloud command line, right? And then just run this command to just approve that particular rollout. So in that case, you will need to specify the release and you will need to specify the delivery pipeline, of course. And then finally, you need to specify the name of that rollout. So you can see the name of the rollout here. So this is where is the name of the rollout. So this is the name of the rollout. My sample nodes this that 00001, right? So if you come to the releases, you should even see it simply here. So this is the rollout name that you can use. We will just click here and then we will just approve it directly from the UI to make it simple for us, right? So this will now start to create your application to the production environment, right? Because we've now promoted it. So let me just minimize this. So you should see that the production is now running, right? So now let us try to just create a new release for our application, right? And what I want us to do is I want us to try to find what we can do about the authentication to make it um authent. I don't know what that is called. Let's see. I don't know what that is called. Is it ingress? Is it ingress? Is it ingress? Uh, all. Let's see. JCloud. Let's see JCloud. No, it's not ingress. It's what I'm looking for is not ingress. Is the yeah. Let me just check one of the services, right? And then also, if you already have a service, you can just click on the YAML tab and that will show you a similar configuration like what we have here. But you don't need to focus on things like the namespace, self-link, UID, no. Created at timestamp, no. Don't focus on anything like that. Even the labels, forget about it. Unless you want to add your own labels, forget about it. Just focus on what you want to change. If you want to change the VPC egress, just look at the config and then look at whatever you have here and then try to change only that. You don't need to really like copy paste everything here, right, to whatever you have in your configuration. You just need to focus on only what you want to change. So here, ingress is all. So it's not ingress that I'm looking for. It's the authentication. That is what I'm trying to find. The authentication is what I'm trying to find right now. Let's see. The authentication is what I'm trying to find right now. So let's see. Authent. I don't know. What is the name of that? What is the name of that? Okay, is it the IAM? Is there IAM invoker check? Because I'm trying to. Let's see. No, 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 no. This is not what I'm looking for. Um, let's see something. I'm coming. So let's see something. I'm going to do something I probably shouldn't be doing, but I'm going to edit the deployment directly from here. I just want to see what is the parameter that I need to provide. Come back to let's come to networking. Ouch, the service, I don't know whether it's my PC or something. Yeah, the ingress is allowing all. What am I looking for right now? Security. Yeah, the authentication. That is what I'm looking for, but I don't know what it's called. No, what is it? Binary authorization? No, we are not using binary authorization. Yeah. So I'm going to come back to the YAML. I want to find it because I don't know what it's called. I want to just find it. IAM invoker disabled is true. Is that it? Let me see. No, there's no auth. No allow. Huh. Okay, let's see something. Let me go to the services. I think by now our prod release should have been done. So let us check it out. So yeah, so we have the prod release right here. So we can click on that prod release. I just want to see what are the configuration differences, right? What are the YAML configuration differences so that I can try to see if I can figure out. Oh my goodness, my laptop is being very slow. Okay, so let's see. Oh, yeah, okay. I think the only thing is that was added. This was added. This, yeah. Invoker IAM disabled equal to true, right? So that is what was added. And so we can do a similar thing. And our metadata, we should have annotations. So metadata, we will have annotations, and then we'll have this, right? So IAM disabled equal to true. So we'll do this for the test environment. We'll do this for the staging environment, but for the production, we will leave it as is. For the production, we'll not change it, just so we can fully see how the behavior is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the staging, and then oh, come back, please. What I'm going to do here is I'll go back to the security and then I'll return it back to how it was by default because I just want to see how the whole deployment will work, right? Yeah. Yeah. So I have that. And so what I'm going to do is to create a new release. So I'm going to create a new release. So jcloud deploy releases create. The only thing is I need to change it to 002, right? So it will just upload these artifacts right here. So let's just try that. So this can be maybe a production setting where it's like in prod, you want the IAM to be disabled, but maybe in the testing environment, you want the IAM to be enabled so that you can rapidly just test, right? And if I were to just check, if I were to just check this just to be sure, right? I think because for the prod, we set up I just want to confirm, we set up the maximum scale to be 3, right? So I just want to confirm that that is actually working. We set up the maximum instances here. So you can see that one is 3, but then for the other ones it's only 1. So we've now created a new release, right? So it's now going to try to deploy to the test. And once it's done with the test, we can then promote it to the staging and we can move on like that. So let this complete. So let this complete. It's taking a bit of time, but let's just wait. Ooh, let's see. Let me come back. Let's come back to the application and let's check the logs. It should give us some information. I'm thinking that whatever parameters I added, I maybe did it wrongly. So let's see here. What is this? What is this? What is this? What kind of message? What kind of message is this? It's just weird. Cloud Run replace. Whoa, what message is that? Let's close this because we have so many tabs open and the whole application is just freezing up. So let's come back to the rollouts and let's see what could be the problem. Let's see the artifacts. If the artifact had an issue loading, the artifact loaded all right. So what could be the problem? Um, so let us see the logs. Let's see. Let's see. I'm not able to view the logs properly inside this very small window, and you cannot even like scroll. I'm not able to scroll to the left and right, so I'm not able to. So let's view it rather from here. I'm thinking that that configuration, I made a mistake there. Either that or did I actually forget to remove the commands I was pasting around? So let's just see. Let's just see. What does it say? Bad requests. Right. So let me check this once more. Right. So metadata. Right. So metadata annotations, and then yeah, invoker IAM disabled is to true. Let's see, spec template metadata annotations. Let's see. Uh, a bad request description changes to require run services set IAM policy permissions. Okay. Okay. So what I'm thinking is that the build service account, because we did that, right? The build service account needs that permission, but I want to verify it by going to Cloud Build to see whether the error is showing there in the build history. And then I'll just look at the service account and then we will just go ahead to update. Yeah, so it's showing up in the build history here. And then let's see. Yeah, the build log should be showing the same thing. So if I look at the execution details, this is the service account. This is the service account. So we need to just find the service account and then update it. What is the row that it's talking about? It needs what row? Invoker IAM disabled require the run services set IAM policy permission. Okay, the run services set IAM policy permission. So let's go to IAM. So you only need to do this. You only need to update your service account permissions if you were doing something like this, right? So if you were trying to create a service that allows unauthenticated access, then you need to grant that permission to the Cloud Deploy service account. So we have the Cloud Deploy service account. If we're doing it in Terraform, then you need to update the Terraform to allow that, which makes it much more easy because if you work from Terraform, your jobs becomes much more easier. So let's look for it. What are we even looking for? A cloud build. Sorry, Cloud Run. Cloud Run. Cloud Run. So what I would do is let me just close this and then let me just look for Cloud Run here. Set IAM policy, right? So set IAM policy on Cloud Run. We will not have it here, right? What we will probably need to do is to grant an IAM role, right? What we need to do, let's see here, is bad request changes to IAM disabled. Yeah. Uh, run services set IAM policy. So we need a rule that allows us to update an IAM policy, right? So what rule would that be? I'm looking for where is IAM? GHI, so IAM, something that allows us to set a policy, right? I don't see that also here. So let's just copy this. What row do I need? What row do... Let's go to AI mode. Oh, come on. Let's create a new one. Um, oh, what is going on? What Cloud Run row? What IAM row on Google Cloud do I need to resolve this issue? Do I need for my service account to resolve this issue? I could have probably visited the link, right, for let's see something. Yeah, let's just visit it. Let's just visit the link instead. Let's just visit the link and then let's look at the row that it's talking about. So you need these permissions. These permissions are included in Cloud Run admin. Okay, so let's just change the Cloud Run permission then. Let's just change the Cloud Run permission from Cloud Run developer to Cloud Run admin. That's all, right? So Cloud is now Cloud Run admin. So let's go ahead to then see if we can retry the failure. So let's come here. Let me close this. Is there any way? There should be a way I can retry the failed process. I'm coming. I don't know why Google Cloud keeps on opening this Learn tutorial even after I close it. So let's go to it again. Right. We should be able, yeah, here. So we should be able to retry. Right. We should be able to retry. If you wanted, you could ignore failures. That means that maybe you don't care about this particular failure. You want to continue the pipeline process. But in this case, we care, so we are going to just retry, and that should now work, right? That should now work. Our application should be successfully deployed. So what we are doing here is just allowing the public access to the application, right? And we are doing it for only the dev and then the staging targets. So we look at it here. So the test stage is still running, right? And then once it's done, we can promote it to the staging and then promote it to the prod. And we will see that the prod should still not have IAM disabled. So it will still require IAM. And then let's promote this to the next stage. So you should now be able to see the diff better because initially on the left it was empty. But now we are seeing the diff right here. So you can see that there is some labels that is going to be changed, right? And it's going to be pointing to a new release ID. And then also we are going to add the change is also going to bring in the annotations for the IAM disabled to be set to true. So those are the changes that are going to be made. And then I think there's also another label here. And then also probably that is the release or the spec name, the release name or something like that. I'm not sure. But then some name is changing here, some revision. Okay, the revision name is down here, right? So some changes are being made to the application. So you can review this difference to now be like, oh, okay, you are okay with it, you are not okay with it, So we review this, we are like, this is exactly what we wanted to do. So we want to promote it. Now let us come here to the services and then let us refresh. You should see that now the test has public access. So the test one now has public access. So if we go inside the test service, you should now be able to visit the public URL. Right, so we are now able to visit the public URL. And if we come back, let's see, this is still in progress, right? So we still have this rollout happening to the staging environment, right? So maybe in just a few seconds. Okay, I think it's probably complete, but it's just not showing here. Maybe it's doing some cleanup or something like that. Yeah, okay, so it's done. right? So we will just promote it once more to the production. So it will also show you what are the production differences that you're going to introduce. So for production, you can see that because we didn't add any annotation, the only thing that is changing is just the release ID label. That is the only thing changing. But the service itself it stays the same because we are not updating the IAM for the production one, right? So that one is going to stay the same. Now remember that now it's still going to pen the review. So even though we've promoted, we still need to go ahead to the review, right? And if we want to review the diff once more, we can review the diff again. Or since we have already reviewed, we can go ahead to just approve. Or you can also download the manifest to read it if you wanted. Or just when you click on the manifest diff, it will just show you the differences. So that is much more simple, but you can also download it if you wanted. It will just basically be this scaffold YAML and then these files, right? Especially to be the prod one. But it might have more details because it might have all of the details inside the service. So as you can see here, what we have is just very small, but then there's labels and stuff like that that were automatically added. So it might have all of those details. But when we are making changes, we don't need to worry about that. We only focus on the things that we want to change. And then the build process will take care of, adding any new thing that needs to be in there. So now we have also promoted, our build to the production, right? So you can see that now the staging also has a public URL, right? Now, I want to also try this out. So what if I wanted to basically say, okay, I no longer want to, I want to roll back the staging deployment, right? So I'm like, okay, whatever changes I made in the staging, I don't like it anymore. I want to reverse it, right? What can I do there? So I want to just refresh. I just want to make sure that the production one is done before we move on. It might take just a few more seconds. Okay, so the production one is also done. So let me just try to just roll back the staging. I just want to roll back the staging and see something. So rollback name is, let's say staging dash remove, or let's say staging dash remove I am disabled. Let's just call it that rollout. So what release do we want to, let me see. What release? Let's see. Rollback description. What phase? I'm not sure. Okay, so that means I need to select a release and then the stable phase. Let's see something. Let's see the diff. Okay, yeah. So you can see that the annotations are going to be removed and then the release IDs are going to be reversed back. Right. And then also the revision name is going to be reversed back. Now, let's come to staging. And then let's go to the revisions tab. Right. So we can see we now have two revisions because of what we did. Right. But now let's do a rollback and let's see what happens. Now, you can also see here that 100% traffic is being sent to this new revision right here. So let's do a rollback. I'm just not sure what rollback would do, whether it will just point to the old release or whether it would actually delete the revision. So whether it will actually point to the old one or delete the revision, that's what I want to see. So whether it will just point back to this one or it will just delete this one, I'm not sure, but let's see. I think it will just redirect the traffic back or send 100% of the traffic back to the old one, right? Let's see. Let's see what this does. So it's also creating a rollout. So as you can see that here, so in this release, there is some rollout that is being made. So maybe refresh. It takes like 1 to 2 minutes or so, I think, to make the necessary changes. Let's also refresh here. Okay, so you can see it's being deployed, right? So a revision is being deployed. As you can see from there. So at the moment, 100% is still on the one with Gen 6 at the end. 100% of the traffic is still on this one. That is the latest one. But let's see what the rollback will do. I think it's still working. Still working. Let's see. So you can see that it's starting to work. So you can see that the URL is no longer even public. It's gone back to gray, right? So it's starting to work. Think, is it done? No, not yet. Let's wait a little bit. Let's see. Hmm. Why? What's happening? Let's see. Okay, so it's assigning traffic to the targets. Okay. Okay, so you can see it didn't actually create a new revision, right? It just sent 100% of the traffic to the old revision of the application, right? In case, you've never really looked at revisions of Cloud Run application, basically anytime you make changes to your Cloud Run service, right? Not actual, like maybe you change your code or something, but when you deploy a new version of your application, like you make an update to the code and then you deploy a new one, right? Or any changes that you make, maybe you go ahead to edit and then you update the service account or something like that, a new revision is created, right? So you can see that the first one we did, this revision was created, and then the second one we did, this revision was created. And so when we did the rollback, it basically switched the traffic to the old revision, but the new revision is still there. But I just switched the traffic to the old revision. So now 100% of the traffic is being sent to this, right? And then only 0% is being sent here. I think probably you can even do Canary, but I would have to explore more to see. So if I wanted now, because I've made this new update, I can now push that update also here, right? So you can imagine that I can push that row back probably also here, right? So I roll back the release, but I don't think I can roll forward. No. Once I roll back the release, I don't think I can like be like, okay, I want to roll forward my release or like go back on what I also released. I'm not sure how that would work. But you can see it here. So this is my new one that I did. Right. The new one that I did basically is here, which is a new rollout. Right. So you are able to kind of create new rollouts for your application, and then you can advance a certain rollout. So that will basically move it from one stage or one target to another, right? One test probably to confirm is if I roll back the release of one of the targets, how does it affect the next one? Because if I now click on promote once more to promote this, what would it do? Right? Would it promote, what would it do? That is basically what I'm saying. Okay. So it's kind of like sending, also updating the next target back because I rolled back the changes, right? So it was initially pointing to the 001 release, right? A 002 release. But when I made the rollback, I pointed back to the 001 release. And so now when I promote that to the production or the next target, it's now updating the release ID to 001. So it's kind of like, okay, now you want me to go back. So you can roll back just one target, or after rolling back that target, you can also promote that rollback to the next environment. So if maybe you are having something in production and then you quickly want to kind of roll back, you could maybe roll back in the test environment, test once more to see that it works, then you could promote that rollback to the, if you think that is the best way, then you can promote it to staging and then you can finally promote it to production. So it's kind of like you make the changes on one and then you can propagate it to the rest of your targets, right? So I think this is very, very good if you really want an end-to-end system where you can have different deployment targets, you can have different delivery pipelines, and then you can basically have releases that you create for different versions of your application. I would love to see and find out more if there is a way to do an automatic release, right? I think probably it will be up to Scaffold if Scaffold can work because at the moment, what I can do on Cloud Build is I can connect you to my GitHub repository and be like, okay, when a new code is deployed to my master branch, then go ahead to make a new release, right? So can I do that in Scaffold so that it kind of maybe connects or creates a trigger, and then it connects to it, and then it uses that to basically say, okay, when a new change is made to my main branch, then go ahead to create a new release, something like that, right? Yeah, because there your if you make code changes, right, your build needs to basically create a new artifact so that the next time you create a release, it will point to that artifact, right? So I think there should be a way around that. I think there should be a way to basically, so there's also deployment verification, which I haven't gone through, right? But you can also see there's deployment hooks, which maybe after some, build step happens, you want to do something or so, right? But I'm thinking there should be a way to set up some kind of a continuous process because as it stands with what I have done, each time I make a new change, I need to use Scaffold to first build the image for the new change, right? And then I need to go ahead to now create a new release. But if I can do it such that when changes are made to my main branch, then it automatically kicks off a new Scaffold build and then a new maybe JCloud, how do you call it? A new release, which I think even if Cloud Deploy does not provide it integrated, you can even do it with your Cloud Build YAML, right? You can do it with your Cloud Build YAML because the Cloud Build YAML has different builders. I don't know if Cloud Build, let's just look at it. Cloud Builders. Yeah. So let's see Cloud Builders. Let's come to the repository. So we come here and then let's just look at Cloud Builders. I don't know if they have scaffold. Probably not. But they did mention, so cloud builders. Yeah. So cloud builders. I don't know. Scaffold. Yeah, yeah. Probably there's a public image, community supported. Uh, Probably there's a public image somewhere for it. Yeah. Mm. Cloud builders community. Right. Cloud builders community. So you can look at the cloud builders community repository. So this is some of them. For let me see. That says, can we find scaffold? Yeah, we have there is scaffold, but it was probably updated 6 years ago. So I'm not sure if uh, you want to probably let's just see if there's any code in it that points to some kind of an old version, yeah, or something like that. Okay, uses the kubectl builder. Yeah, it might probably be all right because sometimes some of these things are very stable once you create it because it's always pointing to the latest release. So once you create it, sometimes you don't necessarily need to be updating it, but I mean, hmm, using a scaffold builder for GKE. It's using pre-stable versions of Scaffold that's not recommended for production. So probably you can look at what they are doing here and then try to create your own builder because Google allows you to create your own builder for Scaffold. Or I think probably if I search the web, there will probably be a solution. But what I'm thinking is you can have a Scaffold step here, right? And then in that Scaffold step, if you remember our Scaffold build command, let me just look for that. Yeah, you can basically run that scaffold build command, right? And that would output some kind of a file. Hopefully, you can be able to access that file in the build, in the process. And then in the next step, you can run the release command, right? So at least you only release to the test environment. And so now you would then need to go to kind of like the, uh, yeah. So you can run the scaffold step here. And then the next step, you will do the release. So this will then release to the test environment or the test target. And then you will now go ahead to basically um, do the promotions to the other environments from the Google Cloud Console, right? Because as you can see here, you know, if you look at this also, even if you look at the ways that we apply the different, not the apply, because this one you just need to do it once. I'm looking for, what I'm looking for is what? Yeah, release. So this is how you create the release. So you can just use that with the Google Cloud Builder, Cloud, because this is what we are using to deploy our service, right? So you can use that in your case to just go ahead to say Cloud deploy releases, create. So you put that command here, and then you just replace the various things like the pipeline name, build artifact. So you can just have that command directly here. Right. So it should be very simple actually. So you make a so you just create a cloud build trigger, and then you provide a cloud build YAML like this, right? And maybe so you will not go ahead to do this deployment step, right? You will not even go ahead to build and push your own image. So let's just say you just do only your test, and then after your test, you add another step for scaffold, and then you add another step to create a release, right? So once you do that, now you can then manually go to the Cloud Console to then promote the release, the releases, right? And if you look over here, you should be able to see all of the releases, right? Which should then allow you to kind of select one of the releases to then see what the next step is, right? I'm sure there is more that you can do with Cloud Deploy, but for now, I think this gives me a very good understanding, and I hope it also helps you so that, if I need to ever work or use it, I think I'll go for it because it just helps you to kind of streamline your build processes, especially because I'm in situations where I have to create, dev environment, staging environment and production environment. What I try to do with Cloud Build is I try to create like multiple triggers, which then deploy to the different environments, right? But we can try to instead do something different here, right? And inside here too, because we have access to substitution variables, which allows us to get things like the branch name, we can then be able to maybe make some decisions like if the branch is dev, then maybe do something else, or if the branch is main, then maybe do something else, or we only want to trigger a deploy on the main branch or something like that. So it might be a bit more of a complex process because you want to think of maybe when you deploy to the dev branch, then you only want to make a release which will go to the test, and then maybe when you send the code to the stage branch, you want to then deploy it to the staging, or I'm just not sure, but this is more of a streamlined process where you kind of commit the code to a certain branch and then you promote it from one environment to another. Right. So it's more of a streamlined process. It's not a process where like you have one branch per each target. One branch per each target. Then you might need to create multiple, you just might need to create multiple deployment pipelines. So one for maybe your dev targets, one for your prod targets. Because in that case, they are all relating to different branches and you don't want to promote one to the other. Right. That might not be the best, but if you are in such a scenario, then probably that is what you would do. But yeah, so I don't know. So yeah, they have a deployment strategy. Okay, so this is something I could probably explore later on. But I think that's all.